Long Island versus Connecticut, which lifestyle is better? If you're trying to decide between Long Island and Connecticut, you're honestly comparing two different lifestyles that attract very similar people. And I see this comparison happen a lot, especially with buyers who are leaving New York City, who want more space, they want a quieter environment, and they want a different pace of life. So on paper, Long Island and Connecticut seem to be pretty similar. Both are suburban, both have waterfront areas, both attract commuters, both are expensive. But once you actually spend time in both of these places, you know, they feel very different. And to be completely honest, you know, I think a lot of buyers, I think they really underestimate just how different the day-to-day lifestyle really is. So in today's video, I want to break down the real differences between Long Island and Connecticut, the vibe, the housing, the commuting, the lifestyle, and what type of buyer usually ends up happier in each one, because this decision is way more about personality and lifestyle than what people actually think. So let's start off with the overall feel. Okay, so when it comes to Long Island is going to have much more of a suburban kind of coastal kind of vibe type of identity. You know, Connecticut feels more like New England, and honestly, you feel that difference almost immediately. Right, Long Island is flatter, it's denser, it's more connected to New York City culture overall. And Connecticut, especially in areas like Fairfield County and further up north, it feels greener, it feels quieter, and it feels just a lot more woody. You know, the atmosphere is just, it's really completely different. It's a completely different type of energy. And honestly, people usually naturally gravitate towards one or the other very quickly. Now let's talk about proximity and let's talk about connection to NYC. This is one of the biggest differences. Long Island feels heavily tied into New York City. A lot of people living there still work in Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn. There's a constant New York City connection in the culture and the lifestyle, while Connecticut can feel more removed from the city, depending on where you are. Now, obviously, there are strong commuter towns in Connecticut too, but overall, Long Island tends to feel more directly connected to that New York energy. And honestly, for a lot of former New York buyers, that familiarity really matters, right? Another major difference is going to be waterfront lifestyle. So Long Island revolves heavily around beaches and coastal living. South Shore beaches, North Shore harbors, you got the boating culture, you got marinas everywhere. Beach towns are a huge part of Long Island identity. Connecticut has waterfront areas too, obviously, you know, especially along the coast, but it feels very, very different. Long Island has a stronger beach-oriented culture overall. And honestly, someone who loves beach days, like myself, who loves boating, you know, you love that coastal suburban energy, Long Island tends to pull those types of people in very quickly. So let's talk about housing styles, because this is very interesting too. Long Island homes tend to feel more traditionally suburban overall. You got capes, colonials, ranches. Connecticut has much more variation architecturally depending on the area. So you'll see more historic homes, more wooded kind of lots, more New England style properties. And honestly, some buyers, you know, they fall in love with that character immediately. Others prefer the cleaner suburban layout that Long Island tends to offer. Another major difference is going to be pace, right? Long Island generally feels a lot busier, right? You know, it's more densely populated. There's more traffic. There's more movement overall. You know, Connecticut is going to tend to feel a lot more calmer, and it's going to feel a lot more quieter in many areas. And honestly, this is one of the biggest personality differences between buyers choosing, you know, between the two. So Some people love Long Island's energy, they love the activity. Others want something that feels a little bit more removed from the intensity of NYC life. Another thing buyers underestimate is the commuting style. The Long Island commuting revolves heavily along the Long Island Railroad. Connecticut more so along around the Metro North, right? Depending on the area, and honestly, commute quality becomes a much bigger factor after people actually move. A commute that sounds manageable on paper can completely change your quality of life over time. So now let's talk about downtowns and lifestyle activity. Long Island has a lot of active downtown areas like Huntington, you got Patchogue, you got Babylon, you got Rockville Center. Connecticut downtowns often feel more classic New England, right? It's going to be a little quieter overall, a little more tucked away. Again, neither is better, right? It's just different energy. Now, another thing I think is important to mention is how emotionally connected that people feel to each area. A lot of Queens and Brooklyn buyers naturally feel comfortable on Long Island because it culturally feels familiar to them. Connecticut often attracts buyers who want a little more separation from NYC pace altogether. And honestly, I think that's one of the biggest differences of all. At the end of the day, I think Long Island is usually better fit for buyers who want a stronger connection to NYC, to the beach and the coastal kind of lifestyle, more active suburban energy, and more familiar New York feel overall. Connecticut is just going to appeal to buyers who want a quieter pace, more greenery, more trees, more space, more New England style atmosphere, and a little more separation from that New York City intensity. So neither lifestyle is objectively better. They're just very different experiences. And honestly, I think buyers make the mistake of focusing too much on the statistics, things that don't matter, and not enough on how much they actually want their life to feel every day, because that's what really matters long term at the end of the day. So if you're trying to decide between Long Island and Connecticut and you want help figuring out which lifestyle best fits your needs, feel free to reach out. All my information is down below. You can give me a call, you can text me, you can email me, and I'd be happy to help and point you in the right direction.